Hey guys, it's Dr. Bickling from Own It Dental, and here's my contact information. Today's video is kind of a follow-up on the last video where I talked about half full being the new full as it with regards to your filled hygiene. The last video, I simply told you that it is the case that if you start to get 40, 50, 60% full, to add more capacity and your hygiene will grow. If you hit whatever that occupancy rate is, whether it's 60%, 65%, without growing, what's going to happen is your hygiene numbers are going to plateau, and you're going to be kicking patients out the back door just as fast as you're bringing them in the front door. And I would venture a bet that anybody's office who's 60, 70, 80% full or more, that your office has hit a plateau and is not in fact growing. And what you have to do is you have to add more capacity to see more patients before you need it. And that's going to invariably have some openings in your schedule. I found that the ideal capacity for my offices was somewhere around 50%, maybe 55%. Once we reached 55% occupancy, maybe 60% occupancy, I hired more people, even though I had hygienists sitting around doing nothing half the time. But then you also saw the results was that we grew. So I told you in the last video that it was the case. Today I'm going to try to describe why it's the case. And I call it the Starburst Principle. And so I was given this speech in front of a few hundred doctors once, and I brought a few bags of Starbursts, right? And I handed them out to the people in the front row and said, take the Starburst you like, and then just pass the bag back, right? And by the time the bag got to the back of the room, we all know what was left, right? It's just all the yellow ones were left over. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, tomorrow when you go to work, take a bag of Starbursts, dump it into a bowl in the break room, and then come back at the end of the day and see what's left, and it'll be all the yellow ones. Because what happens is, the staff, they'll take the pink ones and the red ones and the orange ones. They'll take the ones that they want, and they'll leave the ones that they don't want behind. And sure, by the time that they get to those, maybe they'll take them at the end of the day, but the point is that you can see that they're going to take the ones that they want first and leave others behind. Now, what if we lived in a world where all we had was yellow Starburst, right? We didn't have a choice. There was only yellow Starburst, and somebody brought a bag of yellow Starbursts to your office, and they dumped them in a bowl in a break room and left them in the break room. Would you have some? And the answer is probably yes. So if that's all you had to choose from, then yeah, you'd probably take them. You don't love them, you don't hate them. Just they are what they are, right? Well, back in the 1980s and 1990s. All dentists were only open from Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. or some version like that. As a matter of fact, I Googled the dentists near me. I just Googled dental office near me, and I looked up their hours, and these were the top 6 ones right here. And if you look, they're all some version of, 8 to 5, 7:30 to 5, 8 to 4, barely any evening hours. The latest any of them are open are until 6. There's only a couple of them that are even open on Fridays, and none of them are open on weekends, right? So, back in the 80s and 90s, and even a majority of dentists now, all they offered people was yellow Starbursts, right? And so again, if that's all you offer people, will they take it? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Maybe you have an evening appointment here, or something like that, one or two there. But if that's all the public can get, then yeah, they'll accept it. But here were my offices. My offices were open 7 days a week. We were open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. during the week, and slightly shorter hours on weekends. But we were open 7 days a week, right? We had evening appointments and we had weekend appointments. So now we start to give the patients a little bit of variety, right? We start to give them some evenings, start to give them some weekends, things that they can't get at other dental offices. So now there's a little bit more variety in terms of the appointment times for the patients to choose from. So, if we look at these Starbursts here, we want to think of these as our appointment times, And so when a patient chooses their next appointment, they're going to pick one that they like, one that works for them. They'll pick a pink one and maybe a red one or an orange one. And they'll start to pick all of these appointments that they like, and then there's going to be a certain appointments that they don't like, ones that are maybe 1 o'clock on a Wednesday or 10 a.m. on a Tuesday or something like that. So there's going to be a certain percentage of appointments that they simply don't want anymore once you give them choice. And that's kind of how the psychology changes. If they all get one choice, they'll accept it. But as soon as you start giving them evenings and weekends, they're going to start choosing those first, and they're not going to want the 10 a.m. on Tuesday. So you could look at that as a downside. Sure, that's a downside that now all of a sudden I'm not filling certain days and times. But I don't look at it as a downside. Again, I look at it, the two things that I talked about in the last video were, one, it's not the 1990s anymore. There are dental offices that are open evenings and weekends now. And two, what are the opportunity costs that we're potentially missing by not increasing our capacity? So in any case, patients are going to pick and choose the ones that they want, and there are going to be some that are going to be left over that simply are not going to get filled. And we have to recognize that. We have to recognize that, again, it's not the 1990s anymore. It's the Amazon.com, I want it and I want it now marketplace, and we have to listen to the marketplace. So I showed you this. We had a couple of years of never getting above 50 or 60%. But as soon as I added a hygienist, boom, it would just explode. Add a hygienist here, the numbers start going up. Add a hygienist here, the numbers start going up. But when I was waiting, so this was the first year of us getting in business, and of course it grew. But then once we got to about 60% full, it just never got any fuller than that. Again, we plateaued for a full year, just kicking patients out the door as fast as we're bringing new ones in. Because the appointments that we had available, that 35-40% that we had available, patients just simply didn't want them, kind of like the yellow Starbursts. So I said, well, let's just add another hygienist and see what happens. And I open up more evening hours, I open up more weekend hours, and boom, see what happens. The numbers just start going up. And again, you can see where we added the hygienists here and here. Our overall percentage of filled drops, but the total number goes up, right? So our occupied appointments, the percentage goes down, but the total number goes up. And again, dentists think I'm crazy for doing that. But again, which would you rather have? Would you rather be, 60% full, at 220 or something like that? Or would you rather be 50% full at, 800? Which would you rather have? And again, it's just a math problem. It's not an opinion, it's a math problem. So I'll go into the math. At the time, we were producing, our average gross production per filled hygiene appointment was about $1,400. So you just take your gross production for the month, divide it by your number of filled hygiene, and we averaged about $1,400 a month. And that was through that entire, 2.5 year period was our average. And so, when we were, 60% full at 220 or whatever the number was, that means we had 150 filled appointments times $1,400 equals, $200,000 in production that month, versus, 50% full at almost 800 filled appointments times the same gross production. It's $500,000 a month. So again, which would you rather have? Would you rather be more full at a lower number or half full at a higher number? I know I'd rather be half full at a higher number. And this is that opportunity cost that I'm talking about, that you can't really measure what it's worth until after the fact. Because having a filled hygiene appointment book looks nice, it feels nice, but again, what are you missing out on with it being potentially half full? And that's not something that you can calculate until after the fact. And that was one of the reasons, that little change in our thinking is one of the reasons why we became on the Inc. 5000 list 3 years in a row, 2017, 18, and 19. I did sell Strong Smiles in 2020. So, we didn't make it then because I didn't own it. But that's one of the reasons why we grew so fast. Is that I understood that when I made that change, I was then able to take advantage of that opportunity cost that I otherwise would have been missing. So again, if you find that your field hygiene is 60, 70, 80% full, I would wager a pretty big bet that, you know, your stats, your field hygiene stats look something like this. You've kind of plateaued. You're kicking patients out the door as fast as you're bringing them in. You've kind of hit a plateau. If you add hygienists, even add, here it says I added additional PT. PT means prime time. That means evenings or weekends. I didn't actually add a hygienist. What I did was on evenings and weekends, I would just take a chair away from the doctors and give it to the hygienists. So if a doctor had 2 chairs that they're working out of in the evenings, I take one of them away and give it to the hygienists. Maybe bring on a part-time hygienist to work that evening. But you can see you can kind of mix and match things a little bit to give your hygiene department the opportunity to give appointments to patients that are more convenient to them. Not convenient to us, convenient to them. And so that's what caused all that. Again, I'm Dr. Bickling. If you have any questions, feel free to rewind this video and watch it again. Here's my contact information if you want to get a hold of me directly and ask any questions. And I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Talk to you soon.